So today I am going to be comparing two different cameras. If you read the title, you know which ones they are. They are the Mamiya RB67 and the more modern RZ67. Both very similar cameras. They're both fully modular, similar to the Bronica that I've covered in the past. So in that regard, everything can be taken apart. So the backs can be taken off, the prism can be taken off, and the lens can be taken off. And what this basically means is that you can have multiple different finders for it. So at the moment, I've just got the waist level finder. There you go. You can have a prism finder if you wanted. You can have a metered prism, things like that. Very similar to the Bronica system. The only difference being that these are 6:7 format, so rectangular instead of square, which is what the Bronica was, and that is essentially, it's a more pleasing aspect ratio, and it's the same aspect ratio that was used in a lot of magazines. So for that reason, these cameras were very popular for fashion photographers and people that are doing a lot of studio work. Another advantage of these is that the back actually rotates, so that will change from, so this will be portrait orientation, and rotating it will give you a landscaped orientation. Makes it slightly easier than having to turn the camera, which with a waist level finder, because everything's already flipped left to right, turning it on its side again just makes the whole thing much more confusing. So the difference between the two cameras, the RB and the RZ, the RB, it's much older, so roughly I believe they started production in the 70s, and then there were 4 iterations: the RB67, the RB67 Pro, the Pro S, and then the Pro SD, and that was mostly just small differences between them. And they went from basically, it won't take a picture if the dark side's in, it won't take a picture if the back's not wound on, small things like that, nothing major. The Pro SD was the biggest upgrade because that would take a wider variety of lenses, but it's not much between them. This one that I've got is the Pro S. So that's how you tell. They've got a little thing that says there which one they are. In all honesty, if you can get the Pro SD, it's probably best because it's newer, and sort of the mechanism and things isn't going to be as used potentially, but any of them will be absolutely fine cameras. This is a fully mechanical camera, so everything in it is down to sort of cogs and levers and things, which does mean it's a more reliable camera and it's less likely to fail on you, but that doesn't mean that they don't break down occasionally. It's one of those things, they're more reliable, but you still, because of the age of them, you can't guarantee they're going to work. So if you are going to get one, I'd recommend looking at it first and testing it, sort of just test firing it and seeing if it does work as it should. They've also got leaf shutters built into the lens, so for flash and studio work this makes it very useful because they will sync with the flash at any of the speeds. So on the older ones that is a second all the way up to 400th of a second, and it just makes it very easy to get faster shutter speeds with flash and things like that, instead of say 30th of a second, 60th of a second, which a lot of cameras at the time did have, and was a slight bit of a hindrance really. The other thing about these is that the lenses on them are phenomenal. They really are amazing. This is the 127mm 3.8. This is the Secor C version, as you can see there, and they are phenomenally sharp. It's a great sort of standard lens, and all of the lenses are amazing. With 6.7, the easiest way to work out the effective focal length is you literally just half it. So 127, it's about a 63mm, which is quite a nice standard lens. They did a 90mm as well, which was a little bit wider, and if I could get my hands on one, I'd like one, just because it's more what I'm used to. It's closer to a 50, and I think that would be a little bit easier to use. But the 127mm is amazing for portraits. That's primarily what I've used it for, and yeah, it's so good. The other nice thing about these is that they have bellows extension, So all the focusing is done with these on the side. There's one there and there's one there. And what this lets you do is lets you do very, very close, near macro work. So you can get very, very close focus. And as you can see, there's a little chart here on the side that tells you exposure compensations for this bellows extension, which is very, very nice to have, because I know that working them out can be a bit of a pain. The other thing about these, everything is on the lens, so all the controls, aperture is here, and shutter speed is here at the front. You do have a depth of field sort of zone focus calculator, but because it's 6.7, such a large format, the depth of field is always going to be very, very shallow, even if you stop down a bit, say to f8, f11. But yeah, that's what you get. So with macro work, depth of field gets even shallower, and that can be very, very, yeah, you need a tripod, I recommend it. The other thing, they're very, very loud cameras. There's a massive mirror in them. So, huge mirror in them to cover that 6.7, and you can hear that going up. I'll put it in the mic. So yeah, that's the shutter essentially. Mirror going up and the shutter in the lens opening and then closing again. With these as well, this is RB especially, you cock the camera by pushing that one down, and then you wind on the film by rotating that. So it's a two-step process, which is a little bit annoying, and it's quite easy to forget that you've done one and not the other. I've had that quite a few times, wondering why it's not firing, and then realise that I haven't wound on the camera. What that does mean is that changing backs across is less complicated. You know when you've wound on a back, rather than having to guess whether you've wound it on and then putting on the camera and losing a frame. I used to have that problem with the Bronica, but I have recently sold the Bronica, which was up here, for this system, because I think it's just a more elegant system. These cameras, they're very heavy. I've also got the RZ, which is a similar sort of beast, but completely electronic. So it's all done with circuits and everything inside. So you have to have a battery in here in order for it to work, which is a little bit annoying. It means it's a little less reliable than the RB. So if a battery dies, the camera won't work at all of the shutter speeds. I believe it'll only work at 400th of a second. Maybe wrong there, I'd have to look it up. But other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. Focusing is on bellows, and you've got the same graph on the side here. So there you go. You've also, because of the electronics, aperture is still controlled on the lens, so all the way around. This is the newer lens. This is the 110mm 2.8, so an even shallower depth of field than the 127. But at 2.8, it's very, very critical focus. I'd recommend a split prism screen for that. Something I don't have, annoyingly, which is why I haven't really used it at 2.8, because I know that I'll miss focus on it. It also means with the electronics that the shutter speed is controlled here on this little dial here. So 400th of a second all the way down to 8 seconds, and then you've got bulb as well. And then you've got this red dot here, which is it. As you put it into it, it locks in. And what that will do is that will let you use the older RB lenses, like the 127mm RB lens, on this. But you have to set the shutter speed on the lens rather than the body, which is fine. It does the job, and I've had quite a few good shots with that. But in all honesty, the RZ lenses are amazing. There really is nothing wrong with them. They're made to such sort of a high degree that they're always sharp. They're always just somehow perfect. And I'll show you some pictures afterwards how sharp they are. But yeah, again, fully modular. Prism can be removed. Again, this is just the standard waist level, and you can get muted prisms and things like that. Lenses can be changed. This is the standard, so it works out to about a 55mm. You've also got the rotating back still. With this you have a little lever here, so you put it into R and the back will rotate like that. It's a much easier and smoother movement than it is on the RB. The RB feels there's a lot more friction, so you have to turn it more, or you have to put more force into it turning it. And although it works, it's a little bit slower. You've also got just one lever here, and that will wind on the film and will cock the body at the same time. So it's a slightly speedier process. If I put this into multiple exposure, so the M back here, and take the dark slide out, if I take a picture and then wind it on, that is resetting the mirror, recocking the lens, and it will be winding the film on at the same time, which is very, very nice, considering that, yeah, the RB doesn't do that. It makes it the whole process of shooting much faster. You can literally just take a picture, wind on, take a picture, and it's all much, much smoother. The backs, there are two varieties of the backs. There is the Pro, the Professional one, and then there's the Professional 2. So the only difference is there's a little 2 there, and the light seal mechanism is different. On this one it's got foam light seals, which will probably need replacing, and on the Pro 2 you've got basically a light trap, which is, they've adjusted how sort of the corners work so that light won't bounce around. On the Nico photography show there's a very good video explaining that. I'll link it below, because that actually helped me sort of learn most of the differences between all the RB stuff and the RZ. There are three varieties of the RZ. This is just the standard RZ. There is also an RZ Pro 2, which has a little Pro here, and then there's the Pro 2D. So the Pro 2 has half-stop increments on the shutter speed dial, and the Pro 2D has more contacts on the back, so it will let you use a digital back. If you're looking for an RZ, I would recommend just the standard Pro, which is this one. It's much more affordable. They normally sell for sort of £800 to £1,000. Sometimes you can get them a little bit cheaper. The Pro 2 will normally run you over £1,000 for a full kit. That's basically because it's a newer camera and the electronics in it aren't quite as old, so they're slightly more reliable. The other thing you need to bear in mind with these cameras is that they were made to be used. So although a lot of the time they may look like they're in good condition, they will have shot a lot of pictures, which normally isn't a problem, but it can mean that you get other ones which will look completely battered, but will work absolutely fine. But again, I'd recommend, if you can, looking at them sort of hands-on and seeing it before you buy it, just so you can get an idea of if it is working properly and that the electronics are all fine. Yeah, it's one of those things, electronic cameras, you always need to be a little bit more cautious with them, and you need to get a little bit more you need to see them really to get an idea of how well the electronics are working, what kind of condition it is in. But yeah, if you can find one, they're definitely worth getting, because the images you can get from them are amazing, and there's a reason that people will use them for a lot of professional work, because they're just so good. The RZ also has a couple of different back options. You can get a 6x8 back, so it'll be slightly wider than the 6x7, slightly longer and narrower, and you can also get a 6.6 back, which if I can find one I'd love to have, so I wouldn't have, so otherwise I'll have no 6.6, and I love 6.6. And yeah, it's just a slightly more versatile camera than the RB, which although is great, does have its limitations due to its age. A lot of the lenses are on both systems very, very affordable if you're looking at longer focal lengths. So there's, say, 150mm upwards very, very affordable lenses. There are a couple of anomalies in that. So there's a 150mm soft focus lens, which I can't remember the price off the top of my head, but they normally go for a little bit more, although it's a beautiful lens. There's a 140mm macro, which is gorgeous, but yeah, also quite pricey. And then in the lower ends, that's normally where the lenses start to increase in value. So 75mm shift lens is a massive lens, but is gorgeous. And then in terms of 50mm 65, I think I did, or 60, and then 40mm, a lot of people use those for sort of architecture and landscapes and things, and they often, the price of those goes up quite a lot. If you are looking for a medium format system and you're alright spending a little bit more money on it, it's definitely worth looking into either the RB or the RZ. Bear in mind, the RB, due to its age, they can look a little bit more battered, but they should still work absolutely fine. Being fully mechanical cameras, they are sort of more reliable than the RZ. But then, on the other hand, the RZ, it's just a workhorse. It was built to be used, and although they are fully electronic, they just keep going, and they were built to last, really, which is a really good thing to know. The RB you'll normally find for, I don't know, £300, £400, and the RZ, yeah, as I said, normally I'd say 700 to 1,000 will probably get you a full kit. But there's no right one for a person. It's sort of how you feel about it. The RB, I think, would be better for someone who's going to be using it on location, purely because you don't necessarily have to be carrying batteries around with you all the time, and it's a slightly more robust camera. The RZ is more suited, I'd say, towards someone who's going to be doing a lot of studio work. So if you are going to be working in a studio with flashes, it's kind of perfect. That's mostly what I've been using it for, and I haven't had any problems with it. It's great. There are a couple of accessories I'd recommend for both of them. First off, a strap. I'm using the Optech strap, which it's basically a wide load strap, and because Mamiya, in their infinite wisdom, it's just Mamiya, they have their own strap lugs, which Optech actually makes these straps with the strap lugs on. Otherwise you're looking at spending sort of 40-50 quid just on the strap lugs, which to me is insane, but it's one of those things that I think is necessary for this camera because it is so heavy. The RB is slightly heavier, and again has these weird strap lugs, and yeah, the RB is slightly heavier. You need a strap for it if you're going to be using it on location. Just something to carry it around with. I mean, you can put it in a bag, but eventually the weight does catch up with you. So if you are carrying it around for quite a while, you feel it at the end of the day. I know I've had that a couple of times, taking it to the studio to use and going home with it. Just, you feel it, and it's just not great. It's not a fun one. There are a lot of small differences between them. I mean, RZ, the dark slide will slide into the back just to keep it safe, whereas the RB, it will slide down the side. The RZ has a little winder which just sits on the bottom, so every time I take a picture it will automatically reset the mirror and will wind on the film. That's normally quite cheap just because people don't use them very often, but I feel like that would be a nice accessory to have purely for convenience, especially if you work in a studio and you're going to be taking a lot of pictures. Sort of taking it, cocking it, taking it, cocking it can get very tedious after a while. The other thing is spare backs. So with the backs, the RZ backs will work on the RZs and the RB backs will work on the RBs. There are a few times where that won't be true, but for the majority of it, that is. You can get adapters for the RZ to take the RB backs, but they're sort of rare. They're a bit hard to find. You can also get sort of peel apart backs for both cameras, which is very, very nice, and it's a shame that Fuji discontinued the FP100C. Otherwise I would not stop shooting that, as I love that format and it's gorgeous. But yeah, I've had the RB for about 8-9 months now, using it on off. Haven't used it that heavily, but I've just finished uni, and I did a whole project shooting with the RB and then with the RZ, and most is all in the studio, which was nice because they're built for that. And I bought the RB about 2 months ago, or the RZ about 2 months ago, and I'm more than happy with it. I think if I had to choose one, I'd choose the RZ, and I kind of have to convince myself to sell the RB, which I don't really want to do, but I know I probably will at some point, as having two of them is just unnecessary, sadly. And yeah, they're lovely cameras. If you can ever get your hands on one just to have a look at and have a play with, they're gorgeous. They're so well built and they're so solid that, yeah, they feel right. I mean, they are heavy and they are big, but it's one of the things with the system to have a fully modular 6x7 camera with a rotating back. I mean, it's always going to be big and heavy, but there's going to be reasons for and against both of them. But if you're looking to get into medium format, they are phenomenal for portraits, which is what I've used them primarily for. They're amazing. They're so sharp. They're amazing sort of amount of contrast with the lenses, and the pictures just look great. True of either one, really. I mean, everyone goes on about the 110mm 2.8 for the RZ, but the 127mm equally is a phenomenal lens. So whichever one you can find, it's probably worth looking into, because yeah, they're crazy good. Arguably Mamiya glass is some of the best ever produced. I've heard that in multiple places, but I'm never sure. I was never 100% sure if it was true or not, and then I've used them and they are just mind-blowingly good. They really are, and I can't really recommend them enough for just a workhorse of a medium format camera. Nothing else really compares to it. You'll find other things, so the Bronicas will be a cheaper option, but their 6.7 version is the GS1, and it has its own problems. They have battery drains, they're fully electronic, not quite as robust, I'd say, and you don't have the rotating back. The Hasselblad never did any 6.7s. Fuji did a couple, but they're mostly more sort of compact, more compact cameras. So they've got the rangefinder, the GF670, and things like that. But yeah, there's nothing else really like them, and I'd recommend anyone who is interested in one trying to find one and get hands on with it, because they are a joy to just hold and fire and get accustomed to. Yeah, they're great cameras. I'm gonna shut up now, and I'm gonna put up some pictures that I've shot with both of these cameras. I'll put a little thing in the bottom corner saying which camera it is that I took the pictures with. A lot of it's going to be portraits, and most of it is for a project that I've been working on called Rain Without an Umbrella, which I will link in the description to my website if you want to have a look at the full project. It will tell you about the project and everything like that. But that was basically my final uni project, and yeah, and I'd recommend having a look at it just because it's a very, very interesting topic. I was so happy with how the pictures turned out. But yeah, I'll shut up and I'll show you the pictures now, and you can get an idea of what these cameras can do and what the pictures from them look like. Right, so that was pictures from the RB and the RZ. Throughout that I'd have put the little thing hopefully down here to tell you which one was which. Hope you liked them and got an idea for the sort of very subtle differences between them. A lot of it is to do with just the age of the lenses and coatings and things like that. But yeah, they're both lovely cameras to use, and there's not much in it between them as to which one is better than the other. There is no right answer, unfortunately. You could say that this title was slightly clickbaity. I'd recommend feeling them and seeing what they actually, how they feel in the hands first, and maybe even using them, running a roll through one, see how you get on with it, just to see which one might be right for you. But I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. Consider subscribing, please. If you'd like to see more of my work, I'll link my Instagram in the bottom, and I'll also link my website just so you can have a look at that. But yeah, that's all from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.